I was prepared to chuck the Bible if I could find a provable error or contradiction. In the process, I found over 100 places where the Bible had accurately predicted a future scientific discovery. There's no doubt in my mind this has to be the word from the creator of the universe. And so I was able to explain about 99% of what people thought was a UFO. But there was 1% that didn't fall into the category of a natural explanation.
Can you explain that 1% and what that is?
I can now. At that time, I couldn't. Mainly because I wasn't a follower of Jesus Christ yet. He basically says we're dealing with something interdimensional. It's something that's not constrained by the dimensions of the universe. Well, they rebelled against God, just like Adam and Eve rebelled against God.
So they're not humans.
They're not humans, they're angels.
This is a podcast that I can't believe came out 2 years ago and is blowing my mind. Hugh Ross goes on the Julian Dory show way before I ever heard of Julian Dory, and he explains how the Bible points to a creator, and then how the Bible has been talking about these extraterrestrial interdimensional beings all along, and it had the guidebook for all of us to explain what is going on with these UFO, UAP type creatures all along. So let's get into it, guys. I'm excited because I love Hugh Ross. I love what it does, and Julie Dory has an amazing podcast. Let's get into it.
That's something else that struck me about the Bible is that instead of one or two major texts on creation and science, there are over 24.
Wow.
The Bible, after all, is 66 different books written by 39 different authors. So it says, I'm going to test what I see on the first page with what I see in the other creation texts. And I was prepared to chuck the Bible if I could find a provable error or contradiction. I spent 18 months trying to find a provable error or contradiction. I did find many passages I didn't understand, but after 18 months I couldn't find a single provable error or contradiction.
Not one?
Not one, on science, history, geography. And in the process, I found over 100 places where the Bible had accurately predicted a future scientific discovery.
Can you give an example of that?
Well, I mean, I was looking at Big Bang cosmology, and what struck me about the Bible is it said that the universe has a beginning, and it includes a beginning of space and time itself, and that this God was active before time even existed. And that was the same time when physicists in Britain and South Africa were developing the first of the space-time theorems, which basically proved that space and time have a beginning. So it says, hey, the Bible got that right. And it also says that the laws of physics have never changed. And I said, that's something astronomers have proven over decades, is that there's no change in the laws of physics anywhere in the universe at any time in the past history.
Where does it say that? Well, I'm definitely not as familiar with the text as you are, but like what?
Well, for example, you got
that?
Jeremiah 33, where God is speaking to the Jews and say, you're a double-minded people. You change your mind all the time. But I'm a God that's immutable. I don't change. As proof, look to the laws that govern the heavens and the earth. As they have never changed, I have not changed. And you get it in the New Testament.
Wow. Hugh Ross blows my mind every single time. It's amazing. And I find it hard to believe sometimes when people say the Big Bang is evidence against God. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That just proves that there is a start to the universe. Just like the Bible has always said. It seems like you're just shooting yourself in the foot because, yes, God could do it anyway. But, come on. Let's be rational.
Romans talks about how there's this pervasive law of decay, what we physicists would call the second law of thermodynamics, and basically makes the point that this law of decay remains in effect from the beginning of the universe until evil is eradicated and removed from God's creation. And I said, well, that's something that's clearly true. We can measure the second law of thermodynamics in all these distant stars and galaxies. It's not changed. And I found 11 texts that talk about the expansion of the universe, how God stretches out the heavens, and does so in 11 different texts with 6 different authors, and uses 3 different Hebrew verb forms to describe it. And I says, that's the expansion of the universe. So, you know, it's those things, and also noticing that the order of events for the creation in Genesis 1 were all in the correct sequence. Uh, Everything else I read in other holy books, it got the order wrong. It got the events wrong.
Like what?
Well,
So
for
what does like the
example,
Quran get wrong about that, in your opinion?
well, the Quran's got 3 creation texts, but one of them says that the stars are closer to us than the planets. And even with naked eye observations, you know that's not correct. The stars have to be more distant than the planets.
Fair.
So, and then when I looked at the
That's crazy that he's saying that. Usually a lot of people, that's their number one thing. They're always like, the order of creation in Genesis is so wrong compared to what we find in our studies and their scientific textbooks. So it's wild that he's actually saying the opposite. Why do you think that is?
Vedas, it said that the universe reincarnates. It goes through a beginning and then an ending. But it says there's 4.32 billion years between one beginning of the universe and the subsequent beginning. And I recognize, well, wait a minute, there's not enough entropy, there's not enough decay going on in the universe for there to be a possibility of a mechanical mechanism to rebound the universe. And also, I knew the 4.32 billion couldn't possibly be right. The universe is clearly older than 4.32 billion years. So that's how I treated the other.
I know so many people are going to be like, he thinks the world is 1.3 billion years. Yeah, I don't know. Whether you believe that or not, that is not essential for your faith. You have to believe that Jesus died on the cross and rose again in 3 days. Obviously, that God created the heavens and the earth.
Books, I would read them until I found several provable errors. And says, okay, this is not from God, it's from a human source. The other thing that struck me about the Bible is the only holy book I picked up that had what I would call transcendent doctrines. Teachings about God and the way he works with his creation that can't be understood within length, width, height, and time. Those are the dimensions we humans experience. And I took a course on extra-dimensional mathematics, and the professor made the point. You can only visualize phenomena in the dimensions you experience. But the Bible talks about God being one essence, having one mind, manifested in 3 persons. That doesn't work in 4 space-time dimensions. But you can make it work if you allow God to have access to other dimensions. And the Bible also says that God predetermines every thought, word, and action that every human being has ever performed. And yet it says we are free will beings. We're responsible for every word, thought, and action. Again, that's something you can't visualize within length, width, height, and time. But one of the books I wrote, Beyond the Cosmos, I show you 3 different ways you can have both simultaneously true if we allow God to move and operate in 11 space-time dimensions. And you say, well, where did you get that from? We know from particle physics there's got to be another 6 tiny space dimensions to accompany the 3 big ones. So clearly the Creator is bigger than that. And so just allowing God to be as big as what the new physics shows us, actually you can demonstrate that these things that people thought were contradictions are resolvable paradoxes. But also told me this message couldn't come from a human source. It contains teachings that can't be visualized from a human perspective. It has to come from a being that experiences more dimensionality than we experience. So that's what happened to me between 17 and 19. At age 19, I said, there's no doubt in my mind, this has to be the word from the Creator of the universe.
What would it take for you to come off that opinion?
Interesting you bring that up, because that was the subject of a debate I had with Peter Atkins.
That's a difficult question too. Like, I wonder what he would say, but for me, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could. Like, I have so much. Yeah, I'm not bragging about my faith. Yeah, I'm sure there's people who have 10 times more faith than me, but I would have a hard time saying like there could be a reason to get me to not believe in God. Like, if somehow, obviously, like Paul talked about the resurrection, everything is built on the resurrection, whether it is true or not. And if somehow they've proved that it wasn't true, that would be crazy. But it's impossible for someone to prove that or disprove that. And he says that too. I don't know. Maybe there's other things. I don't see it. The only way would be for me to die and realize that there's something else. I don't think so, though. It's not going to happen.
He's a British chemist. We had to read his textbooks. He's written multiple textbooks on chemistry. And he's also with the British Humanist Society. So I was in London, England a few years ago and did a debate with Peter Atkins on does science support the existence of God. The moderator of the debate went to me and says, Hugh, what scientific discoveries would it take for you to abandon your Christian faith and join Peter Atkins as an atheist? And I says, well, if you were to prove to me beyond any shadow of doubt that the universe did not have a beginning, that it was eternal, that would be catastrophic to my Christian faith. And likewise, if we were to prove that we human beings are no different from the other animals, that there's nothing special about human beings, that would be catastrophic to my Christian faith. Or if you to prove that Jesus did not rise bodily from the dead, that would be catastrophic to my Christian faith. Then the moderator turned to Peter and said, well, how about you? What would it take for you to abandon your atheism and believe in God and to join Hugh? And he said, well, maybe if Jesus appeared to me physically right in front of me and I could touch him, maybe that would, and he said, no, that wouldn't work. I would think I was having a delusion. Bottom line, and this is a debate you can watch on YouTube. 500,000 people have seen it. He basically says, there's nothing that would ever change my mind. There's no discovery, nothing in science that would ever persuade him. And it's like, and he critiqued me for a whole hour previous to that, saying,
That's the thing. Like Richard Dawkins, all the atheists in the world say they want just enough proof and then they will believe in God. But in reality, that's not the issue. They don't want to submit to authority. They don't want to submit to someone dictating their life. They love the freedom of making themselves gods and doing what they please. And that's the reality of what the core of the issue is. So now I want to go over to when he asked him about the Bible and aliens. Does Bible have anything to do with it, or is it something else? Let's get into it.
But they put us right next to the Flying Saucer Club. So people would visit the Flying Saucer Club, then they come over and say, hey, what do you think? And I'd say, well, what you saw was not a flying saucer. It was the planet Venus, or it was the Pleiades, or you saw, a fireball go through the atmosphere. And so I was able to explain about 99% of what people thought was a UFO. But there was 1% that didn't fall into the category of a natural explanation, secret military activity, or a hoax. And this
Can you explain that 1% and what that is?
I can now. At that time, I couldn't.
Oh, wow.
Mainly because I wasn't a follower of Jesus Christ yet. But when I became a Christian, I realized it's not just physical reality. There's non-physical reality. The angelic realm is real, but not physical.
Dang.
So you believe that any quote-unquote UFOs are angel and demon related?
Well, what I first discovered is these UFO phenomena, the 1%, not the 99%, they clearly violate the laws of physics. They're observed going through the atmosphere at thousands of miles per hour, yet there's no sonic boom. There's no heat friction trail behind the, quote, craft. And there's 2,000 cases where they're documented as they're crashing into the Earth. You go to the crash site, you see a shallow crater. If there's snow, the snow is melted. If there's vegetation, the vegetation is damaged. But when you go around the crater site, there's no artifacts, there's no debris. It's like when an airplane crashes into the Earth, there's lots of debris to recover. With a UFO, there's nothing. But the fact that you got a crater, the fact that you got melted snow and damaged vegetation, something real must have done that. And yet they violate the laws of physics. And I'm not alone. There's 6 physicists besides myself that have spent at least a decade studying the UFO phenomena. They all agree with the one who's put the most research into it. That's Jacques Vallée. He's a French astrophysicist.
Yes. He's friends with our guy, James Fox.
Yes. Well, he basically says we're dealing with something interdimensional.
Yeah.
It's something that's not constrained by the dimensions of the universe. You mention angels, they would be a possible explanation. because they're interdimensional beings. So that's a possibility. The other thing I noticed is that it was Alan Hynek, the American astrophysicist in the 60s, that came up with the term close encounters.
Yeah.
Because he made the point, it's the close encounters that are difficult to explain. And that's where you come within 500 feet of the UFO phenomena. That's
there's three kinds, right?
Yeah, first kind, you come within less than 500 feet of the phenomena. Second kind is where there's communication going on.
Yes.
So he says, we're dealing with beings. These are interdimensional beings because there's communication going on. And then Jacques Vallée and others have made the point, we're dealing with something that is not benevolent. Because when people have these close encounters, it's always harmful. The best you're going to come away with is recurring, terrifying nightmares. Worst case scenario, you get killed by the phenomena, or your animals get killed or injured.
That's very interesting because I want to hear a story of evidences of proof where, like, I vaguely hear every once in a while saying, oh, there's been incidents where people have died from these experiences. They literally have lost their life. But I've never heard anything, like some evidence behind it. Like, I need to hear some stories. If you know any stories, please send them to me in the comments or something like that of someone passing away. I know people have never been the same. They've had these experiences and they completely are different, weird, spooked out. But every once in a while you hear of death.
Harmful
To the human
after?
Harmful to the human contactee.
Yeah, but during?
During or after.
So there are a lot of supposed sightings where it's not during, and I could think of
that
some
does
where it's
happen.
not
Yes,
like are you familiar with the '94 Zimbabwe?
yeah. Well, I mean, as I mentioned, often there's nothing happening at the moment, but they wind up having these nightmares that recur. I mean, that's very commonly reported amongst the 1%.
But so those children, for people who aren't familiar with that case, we discussed it in episode 138 with James Fox. But those children were part of like an international school in Zimbabwe. They were playing on like the edge of the school grounds, and they reported these beings who were the size of them, who were friendly, and were observing them, and were communicating with them telepathically. And I believe what the message that they were sending to the children was that you humans need to be careful with your technology. I'm paraphrasing here. You need to be careful with your technology because you could destroy yourself. And then if you look at James's other big case that he actually just made a documentary on, Moment of Contact, which we did another podcast, number 139, specifically on that one. Aqui, ó. Aqui. Aqui. Aqui, ó.
Here.
Aqui, ó. Aqui, ó. Aqui, ó. Aqui. Aqui, ó. Oof.
What is this? Is this where he's like claiming to see something? Or he had the experience? Guys, what are we talking about? It seems though, if they're here to, sometimes you hear of them saying, we're not here to hurt you, we're here to help. But it's really like that new age philosophy, that new age mysticism saying, just look within, everything within is greater. And that can be a tricky slope as well.
Cerca da casa era aquela. Foi aqui, caiu. Seres morreram aqui.
Being died here. Wow. In that case, one of the sightings was the message was, you humans have no idea what your potential is. And so I point these out because neither of these are negative things. Neither of these are satanic things to say to somebody. Potential though, you have no idea your potential. That's what Satan said to Eve.
Right? And so doesn't that put a little bit of a hole in that argument that it's always negative?
Well, for example, this is not a new phenomenon. It's been going on for thousands of years. And so, like, you've got the Irish talking about leprechauns. I mean, they appear in different forms. What I find interesting is that with the UFO phenomena, it was slow-moving dirigibles in the atmosphere 100 years ago. World War II, it was the Foo Fighters moving at the speed of sound. Today, they're moving at 25,000 miles per hour. They seem to be keeping pace with our aircraft technology, and they keep changing their story. 100 years ago, they said we're from the backside of the moon. When the lay public became aware that's not credible, they said, well, we're from Venus. When people became aware of how warm it is on the surface of Venus, they said we're from Mars. Now they're saying they're from another planetary system. So the fact that we see the stories changing and the
when did they say, just brush up my history a little bit, when did they say Venus and Mars? Like, when are some of those sightings? Are those, I assume, pre-World War II?
That's pre-World War II. Yeah, and after World War II, they were saying Mars, but when you get to
They did?
Yeah, but when you get to the 60s and 70s, they were saying, no, we're from a planetary system.
I mean, I believe you, but I mean, not that I know all these cases at all. I definitely don't. I just wasn't familiar with cases since World War II where there was being saying where they were from.
Well, again, you'll find phenomena, and this, if you go back 1,000 years, that wasn't happening at all, mainly because people weren't interested in aerial phenomena. They had no experience of aerial phenomena. So only when humans were engaged in aerial phenomena do we see UFOs. So they're basically trying to manifest themselves. As I said, 100 years ago, dirigibles. World War II, Foo Fighters. Now they're moving as fast as our fastest spacecraft.
What are dirigibles?
Oh, that would be, like the Goodyear blimp.
Oh,
so,
that's a new word for me. I didn't know that one.
That's weird. So he's claiming that they're almost keeping up with our technology. So wouldn't that just be a phenomena of humans seeing something that is only like them, which is us? I don't know. I love that he's getting pushed back a little bit instead of just saying "whoa" every time. That's my problem.
So they were moving. That's kind of slow, no?
That was slow, yeah. But I mean, it's the first aerial phenomena that humans are really familiar with.
Yeah, because you also don't really have anything to compare it to.
Yeah.
Which also could be a problem, because then it's like, well, are you just seeing that? Or is your mind seeing what it's already seen once before, which goes into those 99% of cases you talk about? Like, I think, are there people out there who have to be just straight up lying? Yes. Like stories that come out.
A lot of that. I
Yes.
mean, I have to deal with people telling me stories all the time. It's like, okay, you didn't really have this experience.
I think some of them, though, aren't lying, though, but they didn't see what they think they saw. I think they truly believe they saw what they saw. I place a difference there. The difficulty is seeing if there's that small sliver of cases where, that 1% you talk about, where they really did see something and it's inexplicable. But you're getting at the angel demon thing.
Well, one thing that I find interesting is that you got a number of cases where the human contactee goes into a trance and they begin to compose on a computer or a typewriter. So, for example, there are 4 UFO religions here in the United States, 4 significant ones. And they're based on something called the Urantia book.
Okay.
It's a big, thick book that was communicated from so-called UFO beings to human contactees. And, it talks about technology and all this stuff, but almost a third of its total content is denying that Jesus Christ is God. It's like, okay, that's a red flag. Why all this focus on trying to convince people that Jesus isn't God? And then the other thing you notice is that people do have harmful experiences. So how do you explain that? And how do you explain the fact that the message keeps changing with respect to time? And what I find particularly interesting, because I was in the Soviet Union when the Soviets were still running the show, and they had me speak to their scientists. And it was interesting, what they told me is, if we catch you sharing your Christian faith with anyone except a scientist, we'll deport you immediately.
Whoa. All right, back up.
Okay.
The Soviets had you speaking to their scientists during the Cold War.
During the Cold War.
Obviously, because it was still the Soviets.
Yeah.
And they let you back in America?
And let me back in America. Well, they even paid my expenses within...
Wait, what? That's wild. He must have had a lot of experience. Wow. But why is it then that it seems like almost every experience, either they come to contradict what the Bible says, or they have some terrible experience where they're haunted and never the same, or they're trying to do something weird, like all the weird weird actions going on.
They took care of our...
I know, but we let you back in. I don't know about that one. Am I getting a spook in the very first sit down here? I don't know.
Well, it's an interesting experience because they said, look, the reason why we're letting you speak to our scientists, they go to international conferences. They were very honest with me and said, we're bringing you here. We know you're a Christian, and we know what you're all about, and we're basically appeasing our scientists. And so they get to pick the talks that you give. In fact, they had me. I had to give a list of 30 different lectures I could give. Some to do with Christianity, some that had nothing to do with Christianity. And they basically said, the scientists that you speak to, they'll pick the lecture, not you. They pick. They always wanted me to talk on Christianity and science. And a lot of them wanted me to talk on UFOs. A good third of my lectures were on UFOs. But I found out why. Because a lot of them had UFO experiences, way more than 1%.
Wow.
And I also discovered that these were scientists that were involved in occult research. That was a time when the Soviet Union was sponsoring occult physics.
Can you explain occult to people who aren't familiar?
Well,
I always say occult, by the way. I don't know if am I pronouncing that wrong?
no, it's occult, O-C-C-U-L-T. It's basically tools that people develop to try to contact extraterrestrial beings, like a Ouija board to try to contact an angelic being, seances, astrology. These are examples.
Oh,
and these are things that the Bible explicitly forbids. It's like, hey, you want a supernatural encounter? Don't go to these angels. Come to me. And
Don't go to these angels.
Well, the Bible tells us there's two categories of angels, the righteous angels and the fallen angels. And the Bible warns us the fallen angels are out to harm you. They're out to deceive you.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. And we know, like, Aleister Crowley, what did he experience when he was trying to summon this being? It literally looked exactly like everything else people were trying to convey. It's like the one thing that I find fascinating, he said that all of these creatures seem to change with the time. Are they just adapting and just trying to become something to trick people, or are they just different species? I don't know. It's crazy stuff, though.
How'd they fall?
Well, they rebelled against God, just like Adam and Eve rebelled against God.
So they're not humans.
They're not humans. They're angels.
They're angels, so they're supernatural, and they're supposed to emanate from a place, allegedly, where none of this... You said it way better than I'll say it earlier, but like none of these laws apply. None of these... We don't have to be in families and stuff like that. So how could they fall? I don't understand. Like, aren't they above falling?
Well, they fell spiritually. We're not talking a physical fall, a spiritual fall.
Yeah, I know.
Where they said, hey, we know God created us, but we don't want to submit to him anymore. It was Satan who said, I want to be like the Most High. I want to be the one in charge.
Yep.
And so he rebelled against God, and it tells us that he led a third of the angels in rebellion with him. And so they're in a battle with God and the righteous angels. But their target is to deceive as many human beings as possible. And their strategy is, we're going to offer humans power in return for truth. We're going to take truth away from them, but we're going to give them power. He says these humans, they're suckers for power. They all want power. And so that's kind of their strategy. And that's why they appear in these forms saying, hey, we can give you advanced technology. We can help you with your problems. but you do pay a price. There is deception.
So why would, surprised this didn't come up earlier, but like, why would God create supernatural angels?
Guys, this is so fascinating. I'll have the entire video in the description below for you to watch because this one is good. Shout out to Julian Dory. What an amazing lesson when he said, like, well, don't they just want to find how to give them power and trade technology for truth, or truth for technology, and vice versa? Maybe. Isn't that fascinating? That's exactly what Satan did to Eve. He said, you don't know your potential. You could be like God. Did God really say that you can't eat from the tree of good and evil? The tree of knowledge of good and evil? Did he really say that? And that's what he does now. He's always deceiving. And that's what he's doing today, trying to deceive with mass deception. The Bible talks about a great deception coming. We all sometimes can fall for it in our own little ways, whether that's falling into sin, thinking that we can live for ourselves and not follow God's commands, and we can do things on our own, and we think that we're good enough and we can make it to heaven on our own. Those are all lies from the devil. Lies seeped into our culture and our society, but that is far from the truth. We need God. We need a Savior. We can't do life on our own. So, guys, I encourage you to go to Jesus. The Bible says Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one can go to the Father except through him. So I encourage you to do that today if you want a relationship with God. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. Always remember, guys, Jesus loves you.